Wonder Woman is directed by Patty Jenkins, and it stars Robin Wright, Chris Pine, and Gal Gadot as Diana Prince, A.K.A. Wonder Woman.
So this story takes place in World War I, where an American pilot lands on Paradise Island where Wonder Woman is, and she discovers from him that there's this war going on, and she knows that the war is only happening because Ares, the god of war, is destroying innocent people, and he needs to be eradicated from the earth so that this war can end and there can be peace and everybody can be happy.
Mm-hmm. And we are going to be talking about spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, definitely go see it. It's worth seeing in the theaters, and we don't want to ruin the movie for you guys, so you have been warned.
So in my opinion, Wonder Woman is one of the really, really good DC films. I think they finally got away from trying to be like Marvel and just owned up to the fact that this is just a totally new universe, different universe. They don't need to add all of the humor aspects and the coolness and the awesomeness that Marvel tends to do. I think that the characters just stand on their own. They're already ridiculously cool. Like, you can't do better than Superman and Wonder Woman. Yeah. So, Batman, you're okay.
Yeah, I like the grittiness of the DC universe. That's something that I appreciate over the Marvel movies. Is the Marvel movies are just kind of just clean and fun. These ones take themselves a little more serious, but Wonder Woman kind of strays a little away from that and kind of, in my opinion, goes closer to the Marvel movies, where it is more fun, but it's still a very serious story. It has humor, it has heart, it has really good action. It's a good comic book movie and the best female-led superhero movie. And it's really a breath of fresh air in the DC movies.
Yeah, I think it was a very good, wholesome movie that where Marvel and other superhero movies are very authentic to today's culture. And I like the step away from that and go back to the predictability and stability of an old-fashioned, predictable, formulaic movie, which I felt like this was in a good way. Yeah. In a good way.
See, I didn't like the predictability in it because all the twists that are supposed to be twists in this movie, you see coming from miles and miles away. And while they're fine, they're good story elements, you see them coming, and it's not a surprise to find out that, Wonder Woman is the daughter of Zeus, because you see that coming. And the other big twist, again, spoilers, is that Ares is the big bad guy, and yes, we knew that he was a big bad guy, but we didn't know who he was. And the entire movie, you're supposed to be thinking it's one character, and then you find out that it's another character that is supposed to be a good guy. You find out that he's Ares, which is David Thewlis' character, which I called in that trailer breakdown that I did several months ago. So,
Hey, look, it's David Thewlis. That's cool. I don't know what character he's playing, but it's cool. I have a feeling that he's probably going to be a villain because it's David Thewlis.
Just saying.
And for me, I liked that predictability because I was like, ooh, that is a bad guy. Let's see what happens. Yeah. And you kind of just get that. You need that every once in a while instead of the always like, what is happening? Yeah. What is happening all the time? It's like you said, it's refreshing to see that again.
And I don't think that they put those twists in there to surprise their audiences. At least I hope not, because like I said, you could see them coming from a mile away. I'm pretty sure, and I hope, that they put those twists in there for the character of Diana to be surprised by these things going on, because she is so innocent and ignorant of the world because she's been on this secluded island that is basically protected by this magical spell.
And she's been sheltered by her mother.
Yeah, and she wasn't even allowed to train legitimately until she was older, and because she got caught training. But seeing the movie through her eyes, those twists do mean more to us as the audience, as being like, oh man, she did not see that coming, but I did.
From a music standpoint, I really loved the tasteful uses of the Wonder Woman theme song.
Yes.
They were well placed, and you just kind of got that burst of energy from it. You're like, ooh, yeah, it's Wonder Woman. And I think a lot of the action scenes were really, really good. Again, predictable, and you're like, yeah, go get him, but that's kind of what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, during the action scenes, there's not really high stakes because obviously you know that everything's going to be fine because they're not going to change like the outcome of World War I and be like, well, really, the bad guys won, but no, they're not going to do that. And Wonder Woman obviously survives because she's in Batman v Superman, so there's really no tension in that aspect. But the other characters, like Chris Pine and all the other guys that are helping her out, they are expendable. And it was nice to see them actually utilize that, at least for one character. I think they should have used it for all of those characters because it would have made a much more dramatic ending to that part of her story. And I just think it was a missed opportunity.
But I do think they lacked a little bit of character development. A lot of it seemed really rushed and up and down in terms of story and action. I feel like a lot of things were rushed and then way slowed down way too much, and then rushed and then way slowed down. And I mean, some parts it was all right, but other parts, in particular, when they're kind of like this romantic tension between them, I was like, okay, we get it. Let's move on to Wonder Woman instead of Chris Pine. Like, go back, you know?
Yeah.
And you really have to admit, like, there's no one in the world who's better for Wonder Woman than Gal Gadot. Like, she is classically gorgeous. I loved looking at her the whole time, and I'm sure you did too, don't lie.
Yeah.
But in a way that wasn't, like, lustful,
Yes.
but she was just like, wow, you're really cool.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy watching you. Not in a creepy way, but...
The only thing that bothered me about her was her stance. Her
Yes,
arms were
yes.
always like really far back. Her posture was over exaggerated, and it got annoying, especially in that part where she goes back to the town after it's being bombed by the chemicals.
Her shoulders are so far back that when she brings her hands up to be overwhelmed by emotion at all these dead people, she kind of looks like a robot, just like, ah.
Yeah.
And
There's one part at the end where she kind of does this like frumpy look where she relaxes her shoulders a little bit, and that should have come earlier at that point, and it would have made for a much more believable performance at that point. But that's really the only negative that I
Nitpick.
have about her performance. Chris Pine was amazing in this movie. He's the comic relief, and he pulls it off pretty well. There are some scenes where he behaves in a way that a man from his time would not behave. In particular, the bath scene where he gets out and he's naked and Wonder Woman sees
she
him.
walks in, and he
Yeah.
just kind of is like,
Oh,
oh, you're here. He doesn't, like, rush back in. He doesn't rush to cover himself up. He just kind of is like, yeah, you can look if you want to.
yeah. They played it off pretty well. It was
Yeah.
a good comedic scene, but again, authenticity was not there in that scene, in my opinion. So, and the other characters, they're good. They're there.
But they get kind of lost.
Yes, David Thewlis is good until the end when he becomes Ares, or when it's revealed that he's Ares, and it's just he's overly CGI, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the bad guys, Dr. Poison, she was just okay. Pretty weak villain in my opinion. I mean, obviously she's not the big villain, but she is a main villain.
And Ludendorff's character was very well played by Danny Huston, and he was that ruthless Nazi Germany type, at least from the Americans' perspective, ruthless bad guy here. He was just going to kill at all costs and be completely just cold, maniacal, just completely killing everybody to get his way.
And that is one of the bigger negatives I have with this movie is the Germans don't speak German to each other. They're all speaking English, and I know that's for the audience to just be able to see and hear everything instead of having to read. But in an authenticity part, I would like to have for it to have been in German. It just would have
with subtitles.
Felt a little bit more real to me. Mm-hmm. But it's a comic book movie, and it's a good movie, and that's another nitpick.
So moving into the CGI aspect of it, there's a lot of good things and some negative things. The bad guy Ares at the end was a little overdone, and his movement and voice and face were a little forced and seemed a little separate from the rest of the movie, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Also, some of the Amazon fighting scenes in the very beginning of the movie, where these Amazon women who are warriors and who are meant to be fierce fighters are doing all these weird moves that are in the physical world impossible. And again, it makes it look separate, like either the lighting was off or something, where it was just kind of not very human-like, which I guess they're not really human, but
right.
It just didn't look believable.
Yeah, it kind of went the Batman v Superman and Man of Steel route, where it's like, well, these stunts are going to be really cool, and physically we can't have the actors do them, so we're just going to make them CGI.
Yep.
And the scene in the end, the climax with the fight against Ares, because they can't put a guy in real armor, they just made him CGI. And David Thewlis' face was terrible looking. You can see it underneath the mask, but it looks awful. And it doesn't even look like David Thewlis. I mean, a little bit, but it's kind of like the Daredevil movies or Catwoman, where it's like, well, I know what they're trying to make it look like, but that's really not what he looks like.
Why not just use practical effects?
Yeah, exactly. And some of the editing during that final fight scene is really just distracting to me. There's a scene where like Ares kind of jumps up to grab Wonder Woman, and you don't see him actually like grab her. You see him going up, and then suddenly they cut to Wonder Woman, and he's like got her by the throat, and it was off-putting. I was just like, wait, why didn't you show that? That could have been like a half-second shot, or maybe a 2-second shot, something just to show us a little bit more. And just that tiny little thing, it kind of bothered me.
Mm-hmm. And those are the points where I think it just felt rushed, like we weren't seeing the whole thing. It was just kind of all snowballing into something that I wasn't really sure what was. You knew it was happening, but I wasn't really sure what was going on sometimes, and it again felt rushed.
Yeah, and again, to talk about the editing, I know it happened at least twice, maybe 3 times, but you know, in every superhero movie, or really any movie with a villain, their main focus is on the heroes, and then occasionally they cut back to the villain and see what they're up to. But in this movie, it was like they had a cue for the editor to look for or listen to. Every time they mention weapon or gas or like killing or death, or war or something, they cut back to the villain. And it bothered me. I noticed it twice, and I'm pretty sure it happened at least another time. But I was like, that's kind of lame, but I get it. I mean, your mind as an audience is like, oh yeah, there's a bad guy in this movie, and let's go back and see that.
I really liked, however, the CGI when Wonder Woman is actually like doing Wonder Woman-ish things. Like they're on the battlefield, on the German lines, and it's dead man's land or no man's land or whatever they call it, because the Germans are forcing troops down so hard that they can't gain any ground at this. It's just a moot point in this battlefield. And so a lot of the soldiers have not given up, but they don't know how to move forward. And Wonder Woman's like, well, no, we can't just go that way, so I'm just gonna put on my Wonder Woman stuff, take my hair out, and I'm gonna go charge those Germans, which of course that's Wonder Woman's what she's for. And they're all like, what? Who is this lady? And it was just really cool when she's actually going out into the battlefield with her shield and doing her really cool stances with that awesome outfit. And I mean, she just looks cool, like any other superhero. You're like, you know, when you have the stereotypical Iron Man stance, or Superman when he's got his fists on the ground ready to shoot up into the air. She has that really cool superhero stance with her shield, and you just kind of see all these bullets flying at her, and she's just disarming them left and right. And I thought it looked awesome. She just looked cool. And again, well placed theme song right there. And, you know, she's revving up the army behind her. And that was just a really cool scene. I loved it. I was so charged with energy, just going, yeah.
See, I liked that scene where she has the shield out and she's blocking the bullets. But I at first, blocking the bullets with her gauntlet things was cool. But when she's running across the field, just kind of ping, 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 that was a little just get your shield.
Right.
Just use your shield. It's so much easier.
But she does.
She does.
What I like.
But it was just annoying when
yeah.
she's running, and she doesn't look like she's running very fast. She's, ha, ha. I don't know. It feels like I'm just focusing on the negative, but I did really like this movie. On a positive side, though, the fight scenes are very stylized, which is cool. It looks like it's straight out of a comic book, especially that scene where she breaks into the window, and she's like about to face off against a few Germans, and she just lands on one knee and she's like looking around. It was just cool to watch that. It's like, oh yeah, these guys are about to get it.
So overall, I really enjoyed watching Wonder Woman. It had really good characters that were played well by their actors, and the story was great, and it was very refreshing to see a different type of superhero movie that wasn't all just fun. Even though we enjoy that, it was nice for a difference in the DC universe especially. So I give Wonder Woman an A-, and yeah.
Yeah. It was a really good movie. It's probably the best DC movie that we have so far, outside of the Dark Knight movies, but those don't really exist in this universe of movies. But yeah, it's a really fun movie. It's lighthearted, even though it's set in World War I. It does have its serious moments, which it does very well. The fight scenes are really cool. CGI could have been better. But the overall tone kind of got mixed up a little bit at the end. It was very serious and lighthearted at the same time. It was more grounded in reality until the third act, where it's just fantastical. But overall, very good movie, and I give Wonder Woman an A-. Very close to an A, but just those things that it could have done better. It just missed the mark just by a tiny little bit, but still really enjoyable.
So what did you think of the movie? Did you like it, love it, or hate it? Let us know in the comment section below.
And if you like this video, be sure to give it a big ol' thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you hit that bell icon next to the subscribe button so you can be notified of when we upload new content. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.